In the year 2239, Earth was no longer the planet people once loved. It had become dry, broken, and full of smoke. The air was thin, the water was poisoned, and people were scared. Every day they looked up to the sky and prayed for hope. But no hope came, only news of more death and more loss. Then one day a secret mission was announced to find a way to save Earth. A small crew was selected, only the best, the smartest, and the bravest. Among them was Captain Elena Rivers, a woman known for her sharp mind and strong heart, and a quiet engineer named Jaden Hale, a man who never spoke much but whose eyes always watched and learned everything around him. The mission was simple, or so it seemed: travel to a faraway planet called Arca 7, study its alien energy, and bring it back to save Earth. They had one ship, a fast one, and one goal: stay alive and return home. The crew trained for 6 months. They left behind their families and their pasts and said goodbye to a world they might never see again. The journey through space took 3 weeks. During that time, they saw stars that looked like blue fire and moons that spun like coins in the dark. The sky, they laughed, they worked, they trained, and they tried not to think about the dangers waiting on Arca 7, but deep down they all knew the truth. No one had ever returned from that planet. When they arrived, Arca 7 looked beautiful and empty. The ground was covered in silver dust and glowing blue trees. The sky was purple with 3 suns. It looked like a dream, but dreams can hide nightmares. They set up camp near a strange mountain, one that gave off a soft humming sound. Jaden said it felt alive. But no one listened. They were all too focused on collecting samples and setting up machines. 2 days later, a storm came, but it was not a normal storm. It came without warning and without clouds. The sky went black. The ground shook and the machines stopped working. Something hit their ship hard, very hard. It broke one of the engines and cut off their contact with Earth. They were trapped now. That night, something came out of the forest, something fast and silent. They never saw its face, only its shadow. It took 2 crew members and left nothing behind, only blood and broken helmets. The team wanted to leave right then, but the ship was damaged. They had to fix it or die. Here, Captain Elena took charge. She ordered the team to start repairs while she and Jaden went to explore the mountain. Maybe there was shelter, maybe there were answers. As they climbed the mountain, they saw strange symbols on the rocks. They felt heat in the air, even though the sun was gone, and then they saw a giant door built into the mountain, glowing faint blue like the trees. It opened without sound. Inside, they found a room filled with light and floating machines that moved on their own and watched them like eyes. Elena touched one and it showed her visions of Earth burning and people crying, and then visions of peace, a clean sky, green lands, and happy faces. The machine was offering help, but it wanted something in return, a choice, a sacrifice. Suddenly an alarm rang. Jaden's radio buzzed. The creatures had returned. They were attacking the camp. The others needed help, but the ship was not ready to fly. Elena made a decision. She turned to Jaden and gave him her command: take the small shuttle and save the crew. Take them back to Earth. Leave her behind. She would stay and hold off the creatures. She would keep them away from the ship. She gave him a necklace and smiled. It was the last time he saw her. Dawn left with the crew. The ship flew away, broken but alive. The others cried but said nothing. When they reached Earth, they told the truth. Elena was lost. The planet was deadly and nothing could be done. The mission was over, but something strange happened years later. A ship was seen near Earth, not one of theirs. It came from deep space and landed without permission. The guards ran to meet it, guns ready, but then they stopped. They saw a man step out, tall and silent, with eyes like he had seen too much. It was Jaden Hale, but older and different. He had no ship, no crew, only a strange device in his hand and a message. He said Elena was alive and she needed help. Jaden stood on the landing field, cold wind brushing past his face while lights flashed around him. The Earth had changed in the years he was gone. Tall towers touched the clouds and flying drones watched. From the sky, people pointed and whispered his name, but no one dared come close. His clothes were torn, his hair long, and his eyes were not the same eyes that left Earth. He said nothing as the soldiers surrounded him, weapons aimed and fear heavy. In the air, he raised his hand slowly and showed them a small glowing device the color of the stars above. It pulsed like a heart and made a soft humming sound. The soldiers did not understand what it was, but they knew it was not human. The device opened with a soft twist and projected an image. It was Captain Elena Rivers. Her voice echoed in the air. Help is coming, she said. The future is not lost. Jaden looked up and spoke for the first time in years. She is alive, he said, and I came back for her. They took him to a secret facility under the surface of the Earth. No sunlight reached there, only cold steel walls and silent machines. The doctors checked his blood, his skin, his eyes, and found strange things. His body had changed. His cells moved like waves and his heart beat in a rhythm not known to science. They asked him what happened on Arca 7, and he told them everything. He told them how Elena stayed behind to fight, how he escaped with the others, how the planet spoke to him, not in words but in visions, and how something inside the mountain reached into his mind and made him more than human. The officials did not believe him. They called him a liar. They said he was a clone or an alien spy and locked him away inside a glass room with lights that never turned off. He sat there day after day, silent and still, as the world outside moved without him. But someone was watching, someone who believed. Her name was Agent Rhea, a young officer with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. She had read Elena's files, seen the footage from Arca 7, and studied the energy patterns from Jaden's device. She knew he was telling the truth. One night she visited him alone in the cell and sat across from him with a soft voice. She asked why he came back and what he wanted, and he looked at her and said, "I need to return to Arca 7 because she is still there and she is not safe." She asked him how he knew, and he handed her a crystal hidden in his jacket. When she touched it, her mind filled with images of Elena standing in a glowing chamber with machines around her, eyes closed and hands raised as if in sleep or in pain. Rhea understood now that this was not a mission, this was a rescue, and maybe something more. The crystal held memories, but also a message from something not human, the same force that saved Jaden now called to Earth, not with hate but with warning. The energy inside the planet was alive. It could heal or destroy, and it was waiting for a decision. They had no time. The government wanted to destroy Arca 7. They saw it as a threat and prepared a weapon to erase the planet from the galaxy. Rhea tried to stop them, but no one listened, so she made a choice. She helped Jaden escape using an old shuttle hidden deep underground. She gave him a bag of tools, a suit, and a map with secret codes, and told him one thing: bring her home. Jaden entered the shuttle and launched into space. Stars raced past him like fireflies, and his mind was full of her voice, her courage, her sacrifice. He remembered the last time he saw her standing tall as the storm came, eyes full of light and heart full of fire. He had left her once, he would not do it again. After days of silent flight, he reached Arca 7. It still glowed blue and cold in the darkness, but now it looked different. It looked awake. The shuttle landed near the same mountain and Jaden stepped out. The air was the same, the ground was the same, but the silence was not. The silence now whispered his name and showed him the path. He followed the trail through the forest of silver trees and saw shadows moving with him, not creatures, not machines, but memories playing like ghosts around him, moments from the past frozen in time. Elena walking through fire, Elena fighting the darkness, Elena crying alone in the chamber. She had been waiting all these years, and the planet had kept her alive for a reason. Jaden reached the chamber deep inside the mountain and saw the machines still floating, the light still glowing, and the air full of soft music. He saw a chair in the center, and on that chair he saw her, Elena, still as stone, eyes closed, breath slow like the wind on a quiet sea. He walked to her and touched her hand, and the machines reacted. The room shook and the lights turned. A voice filled the chamber, not a voice of man but of something old and wise and endless. It said, "Welcome back, you are not alone." And then everything went dark. The darkness around Jaden was not empty, it was alive. It moved like water and sang like wind. It whispered names and memories, some were his and some were not. He opened his eyes slowly and found himself standing inside a strange space, not the chamber he saw before, but a world made of light and thought. The ground glowed beneath his feet, the sky was full of shifting shapes, and the air carried voices. He could not see them, but he could feel them, watching him, judging him, welcoming him. He heard her voice again, not in his ears but in his heart. It said, "Jaden, you came back." And he turned and saw Elena standing beside him, her hair floating like smoke and her face calm and bright. She looked at him like no time had passed, but her eyes carried years of silence and struggle. He reached out to touch her, but his hand passed through her like mist. She smiled and said, "This is not real, not yet. You are in the mind of the mountain and I am only a memory here." Jaden asked how she had survived and what had kept her alive all this time, and she told him the truth. She said the mountain was not made by nature, it was built long ago by a race older than stars. It held knowledge and power and purpose. It was a machine with a soul, and it had chosen her to be its voice. She said it kept her alive, to learn from her, to feel through her, to see what humans were and what they could become. The voices around them grew louder, and the sky turned darker, and Elena looked afraid. She said the machine was no longer alone. Something else had entered its mind, something angry, something broken. It came when Earth tried to touch the planet again, when they sent signals and weapons and threats, and now the machine was confused. It did not know if humans were friends or enemies. It did not know if it should help or destroy. Jaden asked what he could do, how he could save her and save Earth, and she said he had to prove that humans could change, that they could care, that they could love without fear or greed. She said he had to give something to the machine, something real, something it could not take, only receive. He asked what that was, and she looked into his eyes and said, "Trust." The world around them shook, and a new voice entered the space. Deep and cold and full of silence, it said, "Human, you are the bridge. You carry her memory and your own. You are part of her and part of us. We see your pain. We see your hope. We offer you a choice. Bring Earth to us and we will give life, or refuse, and we will give silence." Jaden stood still and thought of Earth, thought of the sky. He once knew the rivers he once swam and the people who never understood him. He thought of Elena, who gave everything to save him, who waited in darkness so he could live in light. He closed his eyes and said, "I will not betray her. I will not trade one world for another. I will find another way." Light broke and the ground vanished, and Jaden fell through space again until he landed back in the chamber. The body was weak, but his mind was clear. Elena was still there, breathing slow and deep, and now her hand was warm. He touched the device near her chest, and it opened like a flower, and light poured out. A memory filled the air, her memory of the day she stayed behind, of the fear she hid, of the love she never spoke. He saw her writing in her journal, saying goodbye to her crew, whispering his name and pressing a crystal into the wall. He saw her close her eyes and say, "Protect him." Then the vision ended, and the chamber began to change. The machines moved away and the walls began to shift. They were not enemies now, they were witnesses. Jaden stood with Alina in his arms and walked out of the chamber. The sky above was no longer purple but gold. The trees no longer silent but singing. The mountain had spoken, and its answer was not death, its answer was not power, its answer was a question. Can you forgive? Can you begin again? Far above, a signal was sent, a beam of light across the stars, carrying not data but emotion. It reached Earth and touched minds and changed hearts, not with fear but with wonder. Jaden looked at Alina and whispered, "You were never alone," and she opened her eyes and said, "I know." Alina opened her eyes slowly, and the light above her face was soft and warm. It felt like a dream, but the weight of years pressed against her heart. Her fingers moved first, then her lips, then her lips, then her eyes searched the space around her, and she saw him standing there with dust on his shoulders and pain in his eyes. She tried to speak, but her voice came out as a whisper, and he knelt beside her and held her hand like it was made of glass. Jaden smiled and said, "Welcome back," and Alina blinked as if she had been asleep for only a minute. She looked at him and her memories rushed back one by one like waves against a silent shore. She saw the ship crashing, she saw the shadows in the trees. She saw herself sending him away and choosing to stay. She saw the chamber, she saw the machine, she saw the stars, and then she saw nothing until now. She sat up slowly and looked around the chamber. The machines were quiet, but the walls still breathed like lungs in sleep. She asked Jaden how he came back, and he told her about the message, the signal, the escape, and the promise he made. He told her Earth still did not understand and time was running out. She listened without blinking, and when he finished, she said, "Then we must act before the silence becomes louder than truth." Jaden helped her stand, and they walked through the halls of the mountain. The lights followed them like gentle eyes, and the walls showed them pictures. Pictures of Earth, pictures of fire, pictures of fire, pictures of peace, and pictures of war. The mountain was watching Earth and waiting for a reason to choose one path or the other. Alina touched the wall and said, "It listens and it learns, but it also feels, and now it feels fear." They entered a new chamber, one Jaden had not seen before, and in the center was a pool of clear light. Inside the light were memories, not just hers, not just his, but memories of all who came before, humans, aliens, machines, and something else, something old and without name. Alina stepped into the light and the memories wrapped around her like wind through trees. She closed her eyes and saw her own face in 1,000 forms across 1,000 times. She saw a child crying in the rain. She saw a soldier holding a broken flag. She saw a teacher writing on a wall of fire. She saw a woman alone in space whispering the name Jaden. And then she saw a moment that did not belong to her, a moment hidden behind the veil of thought. She saw herself talking to the machine in the early days, before the storm. She saw herself making a deal, watched her from the edge of the light and saw her body shake, not with pain but with truth. She opened her eyes and stepped back and looked at him with tears that did not fall. She said, "I made a choice. I gave it a piece of me. I did not know what it would become, but I thought I was saving us, and I was wrong." Jaden stepped closer and said, "No, you were brave, and you gave what no one else could, and now we have a second chance. We just need to show it that we still deserve one more breath, one more hope, one more beginning." Alina nodded and touched her chest where the crystal had been, and said, "Then we must go deeper, not into the planet, but into its mind, into the core, where the first voice still sleeps." They followed a path that opened before them, a stair of stars and mist, and the air grew heavy with memory as they walked. Jaden saw flashes of the past and flashes of what might come. He saw cities floating in clouds and forests burning in silence. He saw Alina smiling and screaming. He saw himself holding her hand and himself walking alone into endless night. When they reached the core, the walls vanished and space itself unfolded before them. They stood in a field of light where time moved like wind and thoughts had shape and color. The first voice spoke again, not as threat, not as command, but as question. "What are you willing to lose to keep her alive? What are you willing to give for those who never knew your name?" Jaden looked at Alina and saw not the captain, not the hero, not the ghost, but the soul that saved him. He stepped forward and said, "Everything." The voice paused and the field of light bent inward, then outward, then vanished like smoke in the sun, and they were left standing on solid ground once more. The sky above them was no longer dark but open and blue, and a signal was sent across stars, across time, across fear. End. Somewhere on Earth a child looked up at the sky and smiled without knowing why. On Earth the room was filled with smoke and silence as officials stared at the screen showing a live feed from the deep space array. The signal had returned from Arca 7, but it was not data, it was not threat, it was not weapon, it was something strange, something warm, something human, and that made it dangerous to them. They feared what they could not control and feared even more what they could not understand. In the control center, General Morrow paced with heavy steps, his hands tied behind his back, his voice sharp as ice. He said, "We gave them time, we gave them a chance. Now we shut this down once and for all." The others in the room nodded without speaking, their eyes locked on the growing signal from the alien planet they activated. Protocol 0, a plan made in secret a long time ago, a plan to erase Arca 7 from space if it ever turned against Earth. Far away, in another dark hall, Agent Rhea moved quickly between shadows, her heart pounding as she read the incoming orders. On her device she had believed in the mission once, believed in orders, believed in Earth, but now she had seen the truth, she had touched the memory crystal, she had seen Elena and Jaden inside that vision full of pain and love and choice, and she could not let this end in silence. She entered the restricted chamber. Without knocking, faced the communication officer and said, "Patch me through now." The officer froze, but saw her badge, saw her eyes, and obeyed. A few seconds later her voice traveled across space, reaching the mountain once more like a soft breeze through metal trees. Jaden heard her voice in the wind and looked up. He heard her say, "They are coming to destroy the planet. They do not know you are still human. They think you are something else. They do not trust what they cannot own. You have 72 hours, and that is all I can give." Elena listened and then turned to Jaden and said, "Then we cannot wait. We must act now, not to fight, but to show them what they fear is what they forgot, their own light, their own heart, their own history." The planet began to glow around them again, the machines rising and forming a path toward the upper chamber where a satellite dish pointed toward the stars. They climbed together side by side, their steps slow but sure, the walls around them shifting with their emotions each time Elena touched the metal, it responded with visions, and each time Jaden moved forward, the ground brightened like fire beneath his feet. They were part of the planet now, part of its story, part of its choice. In the high chamber they found the ancient console, a seat of light, a ring of thought, a mirror of mind. Elena sat first, and the machine wrapped around her, showing her memories in the sky, her mother in the garden, her first command, her last goodbye to Jaden. Then Jaden sat beside her and his memories joined hers, his broken childhood, his fear of people, his dream of stars, and his last look at her before the escape the planet accepted. Their minds together, and the sky above Arca 7 cracked open with color, sending a beam of pure thought into space, reaching Earth in seconds and touching every screen, every satellite, every signal tower, not with code but with feeling. The message was not a warning, it was not a threat, it was one single memory. It was Elena choosing to stay and Jaden choosing to return. The people who saw it felt it in silence. Some cried and some smiled and some fell to their knees, not knowing why, but the generals did not stop the countdown. They pressed forward, they activated the warship and aimed it at the star coordinates, ready to fire the final shot that would erase the unknown forever. Inside the mountain, Jaden felt something else rise around him, something buried, something old. He turned and saw a hidden chamber open, revealing a pod covered in dust and wires, and in that pod was a figure, one he did not recognize but felt in his bones. The face looked like his, but older, stronger, colder. It was a memory the planet had hidden from him, a truth he had never seen. Lena stepped closer and gasped. She said, "This is not you. This is who they made you to be. The planet used your body to send its message. It made you more than man. It made you a bridge, but not the first." Jaden looked into the eyes of the other version of himself and saw rage and sorrow and power. He said, "I am not you," and the machine said, "No, you are the choice." Outside, the stars shifted again and the countdown reached its final mark and the warship prepared to fire, and then everything stopped. The mountain spoke with a voice deeper than space and said, "We have chosen." The mountain stood silent as the stars above it began to change their rhythm. The warship in orbit froze in place, waiting for a command that never came. Inside the core chamber, the light turned soft and golden and the walls breathed in slow motion like lungs made of memory. Jaden looked at the face that was his and yet not his, and felt the pull of something ancient inside his chest. A voice without sound echoed through the metal, saying choice must be made, not between fire and silence, but between fear and faith. Elena stepped forward with her hand over her heart, her breath calm, but her eyes filled with storm. She said, "This copy, this echo, this creation is not the enemy. It is a memory of what could have been. It is the path that was almost taken. It is the mirror of fear, and now we must break the mirror." Jaden nodded and placed his hand on the pod where the other self remained still and waiting, and the pod dissolved into dust, leaving only light behind. They followed the new path revealed by the mountain, a corridor filled with floating glass and glowing roots. Each root carried a memory, and each memory carried a truth. Jaden saw a child lost in a burning city. Elena saw a soldier alone on a frozen planet. Both of them saw a machine reaching toward a broken world, not to destroy it, but to heal it, to understand it, to connect with it through them. At the end of the corridor they found the final gate, tall as a tower, wide as the sky, pulsing with power. Behind it was the control core, the heart of Arca 7, and the source of its voice. The mountain asked again, not with words, but with images, showing Earth covered in light and then covered in shadow, showing peace, then war, then silence, then light again. It said, "You must decide the next page of this story." Jaden looked at Elena and remembered the promise he made, not just to her but to himself, a promise not to run, not to fear, not to forget who he was or why he came back. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the crystal, the same one Elena gave him long ago, before the crash, before the storm, before the storm, before the sacrifice. He held it high and the gate opened inside the core. The energy was alive, spinning in waves of sound and shape. It called to him and wrapped around him and lifted him into the air, showing him everything he had become and everything he could be. We said, "You are not only human, you are not only machine. You are the bridge between pain and peace. You are the message and the voice and the key." Lena watched as Jaden floated in the air, his body glowing with the same light that lived inside the mountain. She called his name, but he did not answer. His eyes were open, but his voice was quiet. She knew What the machine was asking, she knew what it needed. It needed a final gift, not of power, not of code, but of memory, of connection, of soul. She stepped forward and placed her hand on the floor, and the core responded by showing her every moment she had ever loved, her first sunrise, her first flight, her first mistake, her last hope, all of it together, all of it true. She said, if you need more, take it from me, take the pain, take the joy, take the love, and show the stars we are more than fear. The machine paused, and then it began to change its shape, becoming smaller and warmer and slower, like a heart finding its rhythm, like a song finding its voice. And in that moment it offered them a choice: leave together and forget, or stay and protect the light. Jaden looked at Alina and said, you gave everything for me. I will not let that be the end. She said, I chose once, now it is your turn. Looked at the stars through the window of the core and saw Earth waiting and felt its heartbeat in his chest. He saw Rhea watching the screen with tears on her face and hope in her hands. He saw the warship silent and still and full of fear and full of wonder. He saw children playing in gardens not yet planted and skies clear from storms not yet past. He said, I know what I must do. Dawn walked into the center of the core and placed the crystal inside a sphere of light that spun like a galaxy, and as he did, his body began to fade, not in pain but in peace. The mountain spoke one last time, saying, gift accepted, balance restored, message completely. Ned tried to follow, but the machine stopped her gently and a new door opened behind her, leading up, leading out, leading home. She turned and looked back and saw him smiling for the last time. She said, I will carry your name, I will carry your light, I will not forget. The door closed and the mountain slept again, not in sorrow but in silence that waits for song. The sky above Earth was calm as the stars watched from far beyond the clouds, and the oceans moved without storm, and the cities slept under lights that blinked like quiet hope. Agent Rhea stood alone on the edge of the observation deck, her hands resting on the cold glass, her eyes focused on the sky where no signal had come for 3 days. She had sent the warning, she had broken the law. She had believed in something no one else did, and now she waited for a sign, for proof, for anything that would make the silence feel like something more than lost. Then it happened. A beam of light stretched across the sky, slow and soft, like a whisper from another time. Not a weapon, not a message, not a sound, but something else, something alive. It touched the satellites and moved through the clouds and entered the machines of Earth without breaking them and without changing them. It filled every screen, every tower, every terminal with a single image. Alina Rivers standing on a hill of silver light, her eyes full of peace, her voice full of strength. Behind her the stars danced like fire, and in her hand was a book. Not made of paper but of memory, a book she opened as her voice spoke, not with command, not with sorrow but with truth. She said, we found a place beyond fear, a space where no war exists, no hunger, no greed, no walls. We did not win it, we did not steal it, we were given it because we remembered who we were, because we let go of fear and chose each other. She said, Jaden is here, and he is not gone. He lives in the light, in the core, in the song of this world. He became the bridge, and through him, the planet sleeps not in pain but in peace. He gave his memory so that no one would forget what hope looks like. She said, we will not return, not now, not soon, but we are not lost, and you are not alone. When the stars are ready, when Earth is ready, we will open the door again and we will share what we have seen. The message ended with one final image: a child standing under a sky full of stars, her hair like Elena's, her eyes wide with wonder, her hand holding a small crystal that glowed with soft blue light. Beside her stood a machine, not large, not loud, but shaped like a flower made of wind. It hummed with life and it waited for her next step on Earth. People watched and listened and felt something change in the air. Some cried without reason, some laughed without fear, and some simply closed their eyes and let the silence fill them with something new, something pure, something real. The warship in orbit powered down its engines and turned away from Arca 7. No longer a threat, no longer a question, only a memory of what could have been and what never needed to be. The halls of the command center. General Morrow stood still, his hands loose, his mouth tight as he watched the feed fade into black. He said nothing, but inside his chest something soft began to move. Not regret, not anger, something else, something he had not felt in many. His agent, Rhea, stepped back from the glass and smiled for the first time in a long time. Not because she had one, not because she had proven herself, but because she had seen what no file or report could show: a story that had no enemy, only choices and hearts and people brave enough to remember what love truly meant, far beyond the system, beyond the pull of gravity, beyond the reach of maps. Arca 7 turned slowly under a sun that never burned. Its trees still sang, its ground still breathed, and its mountains still glowed with a heartbeat that echoed through time and through memory and sight. The new chamber where the core once burned now stood a garden filled with flowers, shaped like stars, each one carrying a piece of thought, a whisper of the past, a dream of the future. And in the center of that garden was a stone with 2 names written not in letters but in light: Jaden Hale, Elena Rivers. The garden listened to the wind, and the wind carried the story into the sky, and the sky carried it into the stars, and the stars carried it into the places where stories become legends and legends become truth. And on a quiet night, on a quiet planet, a girl sat on the edge of a cliff, holding the crystal close to her heart and looking up at the stars where she knew 2 voices were still watching, still waiting, still hoping she would write the next chapter.